Live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome everyone into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology turned podcast. Everyone, welcome into the program. I hope that you're doing well and you are ready for today's show. Because today on the show we have, of course, Ralph Bond. And if you are confused at all by the dates, that is completely my fault. I don't know, maybe I ate myself into a coma on Thursday or something like that, but time got away from me, and we are so happy that Ralph is able to come to us the day after that he's supposed to. And yeah, we're going to cover 4 great stories that you definitely want to hear about. They're definitely on the cutting edge, but some of them are, even further along than that. I'm specifically thinking about story number 2, which is very hopeful and kind of fixes a lot of things that I have been thinking about with carbon credits, just to give you a hint. And yeah, we'll have to wait and see what that is. But story number 2 is always great. So, ladies and gentlemen, Ralph Bond is our science and tech trends correspondent. He'll be joining us here in just a moment to talk about all these stories and then some more. So with that being said, computeramerica.com, that's where you'll find everything, including past shows, future shows, show notes, articles, reviews, topics, and everything and anything else. I actually need to update one of our reviews. So one of the benefits of, being in this line of work, we get products sent to us, and I try to, as much as I can, kind of incorporate them in my day-to-day life. Because, sometimes when you review things, I'm not saying that like I only review things that I need, but if I can work them into a daily life, then that's good. Nanoleaf Aurora, they're the lighting system. We use them in the studio. They're very good for kind of really setting the lights exactly how you want them in the studio. As we were using them, some of the lights actually, the controller burnt out. Long story short, the whole thing broke. And I went back to buy a replacement part and whatnot. And customer support was super unhelpful, which if you look online, customer support for Nanoleaf, not their strong suit. Let's put it that way. A lot of people complain about their customer service. So, beware of that. But the problem I'm having with them is that the lighting system that I purchased 3 odd years ago, they no longer support it, which if you can imagine using that as like your primary light fixture in a room and they're being like, oh, you can't buy parts for it. It'd be like you can't buy a light bulb, It's like, oh, it's been 3 years. You're still using that? I can't believe you're still using that light bulb. Beware of really cutting edge lighting solutions, because sometimes the support for them is not as long lasting as, again, a basic light fixture. So we're going to be updating the review of that. Just because we have a review up that's maybe a little bit older doesn't mean that we don't go back and try to update it, because it's one thing to pull it out of the box and say, hey, this is our review after using it for 10 hours. Perfect, great. It's a little bit different of a review when you've used it for, thousands of hours, which is something that we try to do here whenever we can. So, be on the lookout for that. But by and large, the main thing I want you to look out for is CES 2024. That will be happening in early January. And yeah, always a fun time for that. Now, I've wasted enough time. Ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and bring on Ralph. He is waiting in the wings oh so patiently. And again, science and technology trends, all things that science and technology touch, which at this point is pretty much everything. So Ralph, welcome back onto the program. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I think I've recovered from the massive family Thanksgiving feast. Like you were saying yesterday, going into a coma. I get it. I totally do. And hey, on the topic of lighting, we've had a Philips lighting system. It was given to me as a gift from my family. And gosh, I think we've had that for 3 years, and it's just been rock solid. So there's
Great.
now lots and lots and lots of home and business lighting solutions out there. Wise, Casa, all kinds of people have these products now, and they're pretty well established. And again, you make a really good point about customer support. Always look for independent reviews and customer comments and so forth about customer support. That's a huge part of the equation in picking a product that you want to live with on a permanent basis.
Yes, there are definitely products that I would recommend over, and we have tested some Philips Hue products, and they've been great. So I'm glad that you like them, because would definitely recommend Philips Hue as well. And Casa, Lutron's been on the show a number of times to talk about their Casa line, but either way, we're not the lighting show, even though Christmas lights are about to go up. And I will say, Ralph, that when it comes to new technology, something about Christmas lights, I don't know what it is about this year, but I think there's a general downward mood among the American population, and it almost seems like, and again, this is from no data, this is just from watching the news and mass media and so on. People are looking for something happy, and they have that new Christmas light show wars going on HGTV. They have tons of different services, at least in my town, for putting up your Christmas lights professionally. I mean, it seems like people are really wanting, or at least there's an industry around really going all out for Christmas and Christmas lights. So everyone look forward to that. But either way, speaking of downward mood, Ralph is here to counteract all of it. He's going to completely wipe the slate clean of all of the dour news that you have heard this week. And he has, of course, the show notes. So Ralph, I think for first-time listeners, new listeners, tell us about the goal and what we're trying to do here on our segment.
Yes. So each week, usually on Fridays, but each week, what Ben and I do is bring you stories that are going to leave you feeling better about the world and hopeful, based on science and technology, advancements in robotics, medical technology, sustainable energy technology, transportation advances, space research, physics, like Ben was alluding to, all across the board. And we've got 4 great stories. And we also now recently started doing honorable mentions, other little articles that are in the show notes. And that's so important. Come out to computeramerica.com, look for the Ralph Bond tab, get the show notes for today's show, because if you want to dive deeper, each story, we just kind of get the highlights, but we have links to the original stories, and you can dive deeper. And sometimes I supplement them with additional information. So come on out to computeramerica.com, get the show notes to really give you the full experience of what we're going to cover today.
Absolutely. So, and with that being said, for those who can see, the first story is already up there, but let's talk about potatoes, because it is just after Thanksgiving. I'm sure a lot of people have some extra potatoes lying around. Turn them into something useful.
Yes, that's true. I could not resist this headline. Here it is. Scientist invents potato that could warn us about nuclear leaks. What? This is from Newsweek. Really, how could you resist? I almost thought it was a prank or something, but no, it's true. It's real. In fact, there's a photograph here of the PhD student who's doing this. So globally, of course, a little setup here, there's a renewed interest in using nuclear power as a cleaner alternative to fossil fuel energy sources, such as coal plants, to meet climate goals. And as a result, the use of nuclear energy will likely increase over the next few decades. And this is expected to be accompanied by a surge in demand for effective and easily accessible radiation detection methods. So if we're going to do more nuclear plants, which is a little controversial, but nonetheless, you need to have detection systems to help us get early warning if there's going to be, God forbid, a Chernobyl example, something like that, right?
Something absolutely worst case. And, it's better than having the janitor kind of walk around the building and when he goes, is it a little warm in here? That's when you start looking for radiation. Better solutions, better.
That's right. So with this situation in mind, a researcher has developed a bioengineered potato plant that can detect potentially harmful levels of gamma radiation. And a little timeout here. What's gamma radiation? You may have heard about it. A gamma ray, also known as gamma radiation, is a penetrating form of electromagnetic radiation arising from the radioactive decay of atomic nuclei. A little geeky there, for example. It consists of the shortest wavelength electromagnetic waves, typically shorter than those of X-rays. So that's your geek out definition for what's going on here. Now back to the story. The fella in the image that's in the show notes, folks, and if you're listening to us on a podcast, come out and get those show notes. You can see the picture here. Rob Sears, a PhD student at the University of Tennessee's Herbert College of Agriculture, has engineered the potato plant to indicate high radiation levels by changing the color of its leaves. What? When exposed to gamma radiation, the plant's leaves produce a green glow, providing a reliable indication of harmful levels of gamma radiation without complex monitoring technologies. Gamma radiation, which is produced during the fission process, is ionizing. Now, that's another geeky term here, meaning it removes electrons from atoms and molecules from materials such as air, water, and living tissue. Ionizing radiation can pass through all of these materials, potentially causing damage to living tissue and DNA, particularly at high levels of exposure. So that's the problem I think we all are kind of aware of.
Yeah.
At present, gamma radiation is detected using mechanical sensors that have several drawbacks, including limited availability, reliance on a power supply, because again, these detectors only work if they're plugged in, so to speak, and the requirement for a human presence in a potentially dangerous area, to monitor that equipment, right? So in an attempt to address some of these limitations, this PhD candidate student Sears and his colleagues developed the potato plant biosensor. I love that. Otherwise known as a phytosensor. That's PHYTO sensor, phytosensor, to detect ionizing gamma radiation. Plant biosensors are emerging as an option to detect and report the presence of environmental disturbances. Compared with mammals, plants have a much higher radiation tolerance, allowing them to persist and monitor far greater exposures than their animal counterparts can. So it's amazing, just amazing. The researchers chose to modify potato plants because this crop is grown across the world in both hospitable and adverse climates. Good old potato is pretty durable. In addition, they reproduce through tubers in the soil. And this is really interesting. Check this out. In addition, they reproduce through tubers in the soil, producing genetically identical offspring that provide consistent results. Who knew? Who knew? Genetically identical offspring. Isn't that curious? So Sears and his colleagues used bioengineering techniques to harness the plant's DNA damage response machinery, so to speak, to produce a fluorescent light when exposed to gamma radiation. In the study, the team found that the plant responded to a wide range of gamma radiation. Not only does it respond, but to a wide range. Yeah.
So these things are going to glow. They're going to be radiated from potentially a power plant, and then they're going to start glowing.
Yeah. It's better to have the potato plant glow than us.
Yes. That's crazy.
So given that the potato plant-based phytosensors are affordable, cheaply scalable across a landscape, easy to interpret, and require no mechanical maintenance, they could be used in the environment to improve the safety and well-being of workers and residents close to radiation sources. Wow. So, and I always think to myself, Ben, how did the idea initially come into play? It must have been, I'm thinking maybe they thought, well, we know plants react to their environment. Maybe we can play around with their DNA or whatever and cause them to react this way when they're exposed to gamma radiation. I don't know. It's just fascinating.
I'm just picturing like the first day on the job for like for the new guy. They're walking through the facility, pointing at the break room's down there on the left. Here's the control center. The emergency valves over here. Here's our potatoes. The minute those start glowing, hit the button. Whenever you see glowing potatoes, that is the emergency situation. That is crazy huh? Though. And of course I also did not know about the DNA, being identical between generations. So, as long as you keep your potatoes going, they're going to be the same potatoes generation after generation. Very cool.
it's just fun all the way around.
and because I love academics. They're colleges and universities do so much great research, and I want everyone to know that, even though we're talking like cutting edge stuff, one of the things I love, and my brother got his PhD in chemistry, so I spent some time in laboratories and colleges and so on and so forth. I've been in there not because I knew what I was doing, but because someone else knew what they were doing. And, Ralph, I zoomed in on this picture, and what caught me right away was the logo, which I think everyone can, pretty easily recognize. The one on the right, the one on the left is a spectrometer, and, that's going to be what it's going to be. But the one on the left is using a Windows XP logo, and then just below that, there is Intel Pentium Inside logo.
Yes. And I thought about that too. And the machine, the desktop, look, it has a floppy drive.
Mm-hmm.
So when I first saw this picture, I thought, okay, this story must be kind of a joke or something, because that's just like antique equipment.
No, that's just the equipment that some of our academics have to use. And it's not even like a matter of like, can't someone get this guy $500 within the last 20 years. It's more like the software that they run is only capable on computers that are probably 20 years old at this point. So
and that's something.
Cutting edge research and technology is still being done on Windows, XP if you're lucky. Luckily, they've upgraded from Windows 95. But still, very cool story, and I like that one a lot. Story number one. Story number two. Let's go ahead and scroll down here and talk a bit about, we mentioned on the show, pretty frequently that what we may talk about may never actually come to fruition. It's research. It's point of proof. There's it's all maybe could be possibly one day, and there's nothing wrong with that, because what may be one day is going to be what will happen one day. But this is one of the stories that it's further down the line. It is up and running. It's really cool. Yeah. So story number two.
Yeah, it is interesting. And you make a good point, because some of the stories we talk about, to your point, are really looking down the road to a future possible, maybe if it's marketable and so on and so forth. Other stories are key trend indicators that sometimes involve something that's happening right now, and it's going to steamroll. So that's kind of the mix of what we do each show. So headline here, and this story, by the way, got a lot of coverage in the second and third layers of your news services. It may not have been a story that bubbled up to compete with what's going on in the Middle East or whatever, but very important story. So here's the headline: United States opens first, and it should say commercial, facility to suck CO2 out of the air. And I got this from futurism.com. And again, many, many other outlets covered this story as well. But here we go. For the first time, a commercial facility that can suck carbon out of the air and store it underground has opened in the United States. And I'm going to stop for a second and say it's good, but also there's some very controversial elements to this story as well. We'll get into that in a moment here. So in a November 9 press release, the team behind Heirloom Carbon Technologies said their newly opened direct air capture facility near San Francisco will be able to siphon CO2 out of the atmosphere and store it securely underground in concrete for paying customers. And this also brings in the whole topic of carbon offsets and carbon credits and that sort of thing. Yeah, we'll get into that too. So from more data from the press release, fully powered by renewable energy supplied locally by Ava Community Energy and constructed with union labor, our Tracy, California facility has been operational for nearly 1,000 hours, of course, more than that now since this was a November 9 announcement, and is actively capturing atmospheric CO2, which will be permanently sequestered in concrete through a partnership with Carbon Cure Technology. So it's kind of a collaboration of players that make this whole system work. The facility has a capture capacity of up to 1,000 tons of CO2 per year, which again, you'll see is a little bit of a weakness, but we'll get into that, and will deliver net removals to early catalytic buyers of Heirloom CO2 removal credits. And their customer lineup right now includes Microsoft, Stripe, Shopify, and Klarna. So through dozens of carbon capture, or pardon me, though dozens of carbon capture and storage facilities have been operational around the world for more than a decade, so it's not the first ever system. Most of the carbon capture and storage plants are involved in capturing and storing new emissions on location made by other pollutive processes like coal mining, leading to the so-called clean coal technology that experts and activists argue is anything but clean. Okay, so here's the point. They're saying that most of these solutions where you capture carbon CO2 out of the air and then store it safely are physically associated with a polluting plant of some kind, right? That's the key. And this is different. What we're talking about here is something different. Direct air capture, meanwhile, which is what's going on in this story, sucks out ambient carbon from the air without any other industrial process alongside it. In the case of Heirloom, it's stored in what the company insists are secure concrete repositories underground. That's also controversial. How many years can we go forward with, putting CO2 in concrete and burying it in the ground? That's also controversial, right? Environmental groups are not thrilled about that.
And we've covered stories in the past though that you can actually capture the stuff, and they're putting it in probably storage drums and putting it in a storage facility like in a mountain somewhere, and then they're sealing it up, and that's that'll be the end of it for 10,000, 100,000 years, whatever it'll be. But we've also covered stories about actually repurposing it and turning it into concrete and stuff like that. So Ralph, you're right. There's turning it into a useful product is probably better, but burying it in a mountain is probably good for the next 10,000 years, something like that.
If we make it that long.
Right.
So a little bit of a reality check that comes up in the article. It says, as the New York Times acknowledges in its reporting on the new plant, Heirloom's first facility in Tracy, California, which again is in the San Francisco Bay Area, is pretty small and only able to capture 1,000 tons of CO2 from the air per year. However, though as the CEO and co-founder, Shashank Samala is his name, points out in the press release, the number has gone from 1 kilogram of CO2 when they started off up to 1 million or 1,000 metric tons in just over 2 years. And so he goes on to say, we want to get to millions of tons per year, of course, as he told the New York Times. And that means copying and pasting this basic design over and over. So this is the beginning of this particular commercial plant, and carbon credits, carbon offset credits and so forth, very controversial because it's basically saying, oh, Microsoft, you might be polluting, or Intel here where I live in the Hillsboro, Oregon area, we have huge Intel plants. You may be emitting CO2, but if you pay somebody else to take care of this, you can offset. It's great, but it's also controversial too. There's a real mixed bag of things going on with stories like this.
So obviously this one is very, very short on a solution. It's not going to be a solution. Just looking up, some of these numbers, and I don't know if I think this one's real, although it's from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, saying that I think a car emits like 4.7 metric tons of carbon a year. So one passenger car emits 4.7 or 4.6 metric tons. That's a typical passenger vehicle. So that's assuming 22 miles per gallon, 11,000 miles a year. Every gallon of gas burned is about 8 kilograms of CO2. So anyways, this thing is, very, very small scale for what we need. But what I do like about this, Ralph, is that it's not buying trees that already exist so that you can buy the carbon credits to it, because that doesn't really fix anything. This is not, like you said, associated with another process that probably emits even more carbon stuff. This is like one of the few, if only, actually negative carbon captures, out there today and producing and selling. It may be super small scale, but it's a first, and that's something really, really
that's
cool.
Right.
That's unique. And also what I really find funny, which if you're watching the video portion, you can see it there. This was part of their website. If you think that there's a different way to do this, like, I don't know what all of you are picturing in your minds for how this is done. The short answer is they have giant fans blowing into what look like, your AC filter, the thing that you should change because you haven't done that in 6 months. It looks like an AC filter, on an industrial scale, stacked up 100 times with giant filters. But Ralph, that's pretty much all they're doing is taking big fans and blowing ambient air into big filters like you would your AC unit.
Yep.
That's it.
Yeah. It's pretty, it would be fun to kind of learn more about the actual mechanics of what's going on based on that picture. But you're right. I think it looks like a gigantic filtration system of sorts, like your air conditioning almost.
Yeah. And they have little robot arms that go up and down that kind of replace the filters as they go, but it's not that much more complicated. So if anyone has a better solution, please come forward. But for now, this is what we're working with. And again, it is unique that it is one of the few actually negative carbon capture facilities out there. So very cool to them. And hopefully one of many, like they said in the article. So that's story number 2. Story number 3, we're going to get we're also going to talk about air. Air is very good. But where air is even cooler? Mars, because there's not a lot of it, but we would like there to be. So let's talk about story number 3.
Yes. The headline here, this is so great. I got this from space.com via msn.com. Also followed up with another great article in USA Today. So in the show notes, we have the links to both of those resources for this story. Headline here is artificial intelligence chemist. It's actually a robotic chemist. So artificial intelligence chemist finds molecule to make oxygen on Mars after sifting through millions of molecules. We'll get into this, it'll be all explained in a moment here. So using meteorites from Mars, an AI-powered robot chemist at the University of Science and Technology of China synthesized compounds that could be used to generate oxygen from water, scientists announced on November the 13th, so not that long ago here, potential future crewed missions. That's crewed as in crew on a boat, not crude. Potential future crewed missions to Mars will need oxygen, of course, not just for astronauts to breathe, but also for use as rocket propellant. And one key way to make such missions cost effective in the long run is to use resources that already exist on the red planet to create the oxygen. That would be, of course, much easier than lugging a bunch of oxygen and oxygen-producing materials all the way from Earth, of course. So the idea is promising because Mars does possess significant reserves of frozen water ice. We kind of forget that. Because water is made of hydrogen and oxygen, scientists have been looking for ways to harvest the latter element from those Martian reserves of frozen water. In particular, compounds known as catalysts are capable of spurring chemical reactions that split water molecules to generate oxygen and hydrogen gas. The AI-powered robot chemist at the University of Science and Technology of China, developed by a research team led by a fellow named Jun Jiang, I hope I'm saying that right, used a robot arm to collect samples from the Martian meteorites. Then it employed a laser to scan the ore. And here's where it really gets better and better. From there, it calculated more than 3.7 million molecules it could make from 6 different metallic elements in the rocks: iron, nickel, manganese, magnesium, aluminum, and calcium. Now, this part, this is great. Within 6 weeks, keep that in mind, 6 weeks without any human intervention, the AI-powered robot chemist selected, synthesized, and tested 243 of those different molecules. So 3.7 million molecules. It figured out there are 243 of those different molecules. I'm really going to pay some attention to these. And the best catalyst the robot found could split water at minus 34.6 degrees Fahrenheit, which is minus 37 degrees Celsius, the kind of cold temperature found on none other than Mars. How about that? And here comes the statistic that just makes your brain explode. The researchers estimate it would have taken a human scientist something like 2,000 1,000 years to find the best catalyst using conventional trial and error techniques. That brings up a thing, we've been talking about this off and on for a long time. There's so much scary talk about AI and, ooh, it's terrible, it's bad. This is an example of how great artificial intelligence can be in research, right? I mean, it's amazing.
the fact that it can go through, thousands and thousands of permutations and really probably millions of, if this, then that, then what about this? Then, that is very, very, honestly, a very good use of AI. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's great. You raise a good point. The if then else algorithm of research, and these things can do it at blinding speed. The scientists now aim to see if their AI chemists can operate under Martian conditions other than temperature. So temperature is one thing, right? Now they've got to say, can this work really in the complete Martian environment in which the atmospheric composition, air density, humidity, and gravity, and so on are so different than those on Earth, as the lead researcher points out in their announcement. And the researchers detailed their findings online on Monday, the 13th of November, in the journal Nature Synthesis. So the whole world can check out their research. And again, in the show notes, we have a link. So if you want to go dive really deep, geeky, you can with this link.
Yeah, the whole paper, I'm sure, is full of, a lot of little, what if kind of scenarios. But really, this is like the first step to, I imagine, if they wanted to produce oxygen on Mars, Ralph, we know where the ice is. Maybe go there, pick up the ice, sift through the soil, get the catalyst, split the water into its base elements, and then bring that back to a human man base on Mars. And so, have some kind of automated rover that would, essentially mine oxygen for you on Mars, which is super cool.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
Little advancements like that are going, it may not be the only solution to getting oxygen on Mars, but it's another solution that hopefully could lead to a permanent settlement on Mars, which would be something I'm hoping happens in the next 20, 30 years. But hey,
you got it.
Who knows? Who knows? So there you go. Very, very cool though. And like you said, a good use of AI. So that's story number 3. Story number 4. Let's talk about, I know that all of you just came off Thanksgiving, and by now, 2 days later, something might be stirring in you, and you might have some free space in you. How about a robot? Would you like an ingestible sensor? Well, MIT has you covered.
Yes. In fact, one of the things that we do with this segment each week is end with something in medical technology. So this is a good one. Good old MIT tests new ingestible sensor that records your breathing through your intestines. Wow. Okay. Got this from Engadget.com. Also went to the MIT news website itself. The link is in there as well in the show notes. And there's even a video that you can check out. The link is all in the show notes at computeramerica.com. So come on and check it out. And you see there's a photo if you're able to see our show right now, there's a photo showing the man holding this thing. It's very, very small. So here's the story.
I'll say from the outset, it's small, but for something that you probably have to swallow, it's not quite small enough yet for my taste, but what do I know?
You need a big glass of water or something.
It's fairly large, but still swallowable and small. Yes.
It's pretty small considering what's going on inside of it. How about that? It's pretty impressive. Okay, so MIT researchers have developed an ingestible capsule that can monitor vital signs, including heart rate and breathing patterns from within a patient's gastrointestinal tract. The scientists also say that the novel device has the potential to also be used to detect signs of respiratory depression during an opioid overdose. So there's a lot of really interesting possible uses for this. Giovanni Traverso, an associate professor of mechanical engineering at MIT who has been working on developing a range of ingestible sensors, said the device will be especially useful for sleep studies. Now, this I can personally relate to. I have been diagnosed as severe sleep apnea. Oh, boy. And for the last 10 or more years, I've had this ridiculous mask thing I have to wear at night. Anyway.
I not to get too personal, but my wife just got signed up for one that should happen here in the next month or two. And,
Yeah.
they Ralph, I got to say, from like historical knowledge, I know that they kind of have you like sleep in what looks like an operating room. It's like, yeah, go ahead
Yes,
and get a
right.
good night's sleep right here on this operating table.
Yeah, right.
But, at least now they have figured out, oh, we can furnish the hospital with IKEA furniture and make it a little bit more, kind of at home.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
but,
You're right
but
on
I
all
digress. Sleep
counts.
studies suck.
You're
Yes.
Yes. And so this new invention, they think has some real promise to help make that whole process a lot more accessible. Let's put it that way, and comfortable and convenient. So to your point, conventionally, sleep studies to diagnose sleep apnea require patients to be hooked up to a number of sensors and devices, exactly what you're alluding to. In labs and in at-home studies, sensors can be attached to a patient's scalp, temples, chest, and lungs with wires, all this gear. And the patient must also wear what's called a nasal cannula, a device over your nose, a chest belt, and pulse oximeter, which can connect to a portable monitor. Ingestible sensor technology, on the other hand, eliminates the need for that. So this is the idea here is you could swallow this device and not have to have all this gear, all this equipment, or even be in the facility that you allude to, a hospital-like environment, right? Which is what I did. I spent the night in one of these facilities, and I was all hooked up, just like they were saying. So this trial, which used a capsule made by Celero Systems, a startup led by MIT and Harvard researchers, marks the first time ingestible sensor technology was tested in humans. Aside from the startup and MIT, the research was spearheaded by experts at West Virginia University and other hospital affiliates, so a real team effort. And I want to make a qualifier. The first time ingestible sensor technology tested on humans, I think that's they mean to say for this purpose, because you and I have covered stories about ingestible monitoring systems and so forth that have been tested on humans. So I think, to be fair and honest, it's not absolutely the first time somebody has swallowed a sensor for medical monitoring purposes. I think, again, it has to do with this goal, this particular thing, the respiratory aspect. Okay.
And really, I had no idea that swallowing a pill and having it, lay in your stomach could sense oxygen. Because a fool, I thought oxygen was kind of handled by the lungs, but I guess the stomach has a good
Isn't that interesting?
pathway. So I had no idea.
Yeah, you raise a really good point. It is kind of fascinating, and I'm sure you can use the links in the show notes to dive deeper and maybe learn a little bit more about actually how this works. So the capsule contains 2 small batteries and a wireless antenna that transmits data. The ingestible sensor, which is the size of a vitamin capsule, a big one, traveled through the gastrointestinal tract and collected signals from the device while it was in the stomach. And the participants stayed at a sleep lab overnight while the device recorded respiration, heart rate, temperature, and gastric motility. But remember, again, though, they're not all hooked up to wires and gear like traditionally would be the case. And the sensor was also able to detect sleep apnea in one of the patients during the trial. So actually, one of the humans that volunteered for this, they said, oh, you've got apnea, buddy. The findings suggest that the ingestible was able to measure health metrics on a par with medical grade diagnostic equipment at the sleep center. So they found out, guess what? Swallow this guy, it does its job, and it did the job as well as our expensive non-portable gear. That's important. And MIT says there were no adverse effects reported due to the capsule ingestion. The capsule typically passes through a patient within a day or so, like my Thanksgiving dinner, though that short internal shelf life may also limit how effective it could be as a monitoring device. So it can only stay in your body for a day or so. And, they're a little concerned about that.
It says that, but at the same time, I'm looking at the video. If you're watching the video portion, this is from Celero Systems, their website itself.
Right.
And they're saying using their pill remains in the stomach for 1 week using proprietary technology. And then I think after that 1 week, then it takes about a day for it to leave the system. So I'm not sure which is accurate, either the article that you pull from, which, MIT and the research, all that good stuff. But according to their website, they're saying that the pill can stay there for 1 week collecting data. So
It's a great point because actually in the article, it talks about Traverso, the lead scientist, told Engadget magazine that he aims to have Celero, which he co-founded, eventually contain a mechanism that would allow the capsule to sit in a patient's stomach for a week. So maybe, Ben, maybe they've achieved that goal since this article came out just a week or so ago. Maybe they've been able to pull it off. So that's great. And that means it's very useful for diagnostic purposes. And also, I'd like to know, how do they figure out how to keep that thing in your system for a week? Your body's trying to get stuff through there. So that would be fun to find out.
I don't know. And and I'm curious, like, I'm sure it's a lot like that scene in Jurassic Park where they're looking for the cell phone, and it's coming from the giant pile of dung, that they have to pull the cell phone out. But let's just say, I don't know how they clean it between patients, but who knows? We'll see. It's probably one-time use. Well, let's be real, but still. It's a very, very novel idea. And the fact that it can potentially do everything that, like, again, we're kind of gearing up for a sleep study, and they, kind of showed us around the facility, and they showed us all the techniques. Ralph, like, it's it's a room, it's a lot of medical equipment, it's a lot of trained professionals and technicians who are monitoring you for 24 hours. Like, there's a lot of overhead, and if you can pull a lot of that same information from a pill that you swallow, and and like I said, doesn't just monitor but actually diagnoses as well, that could be a game changer. Because the doctor that we saw about the sleep study, she's one of those doctors that, I'm sure it's not just for her bank account, but she's like, she thinks everyone in the world should have a sleep study, to really tell what's going on. Are you getting good sleep? Do you have apnea? Do you have any conditions that could, potentially, shorten your life, that could potentially make your life a lot better? That's really hard to do when you have to go into a laboratory and have all that overhead. But if you can do that for anyone, Ralph, like, if you could go to the store and pick one of these up for like $100 off the shelf and get this done at home, that would be amazing. That would be a game changer, I think, for millions of people.
Absolutely. It would be absolutely. And you're so right, Ben. And looking at the illustration again, folks, if you can see what we're doing here, it shows it sending data to a smartphone app. I mean, how cool is that? So you and the physician or whatever people you're working with could all access this data. And apnea is a serious thing, folks. It's not just, I'd like to get a nice sleep at night. Can you help me do that? It has to do with if ceasing to breathe for a period of time. And as my physician explained to me when he told me many years ago, sorry, buddy, you've been diagnosed as severe sleep apnea. And he said, Ralph, what's going on with you is you're out. And I used to have these terrible deals where I burst and like snort and burst and boom, wake up like this because my body was going, dude, you're dying. Yes. And what he said is the problem with severe sleep apnea, folks, is you can have brain damage, which I've tried to use as an excuse with my wife for many of my failings and shortcomings and so forth. This is all because of sleep apnea. Yes. But anyway, if you have sleep situations where you suddenly burst awake or you snort, or those are warning signs. And not that everybody on the planet should be tested, but if you have any symptoms like that, please go and have it checked out. It's a serious situation. And the gear, they're getting better and better with the gear. I use a nose pillow instead of the big Darth Vader mask, and that helps, and so on and so forth. So little public service here, please take it seriously if you have those symptoms. And not even just the symptoms, just, go Google it. There's lots of, kind of warning signs, but, it's been linked to a lot of, heart conditions and heart problems, stuff like that. Yes. So when I say that, a pill that you swallow, it reads, diagnoses, and, that's pretty much it. Like, that could make a huge difference in a lot of people's lives, because the cost of one of those sleep studies is very prohibitive, I think, to a lot of people. And just the fact that you can't have doctors testing I think we're up to like 8.1 billion people now, testing that many people. So, hey, who knows? Could help a lot of people. And collaboration from MIT and Harvard, right? Yeah, and Harvard researchers. Pretty cool.
So very cool. So there you go. And also West Virginia University, which I did not know they had West Virginia University. So who knew?
Yeah, that's something.
There you go. So that's story number 4. Ladies and gentlemen, that is that's our main bulk of our show. But if you're like, we could use even more pick-me-up. Well, Ralph has you covered it with the honorable mentions.
Yes. A few honorable mentions. We'll just give you the headlines. Come out to computeramerica.com, go to the Ralph Bond tab, get the show notes for today, all the good stuff. You can have the links, but here are the headlines for the honorable mentions. Graphene gold, MIT, good old MIT again, finds new properties in pencil lead. This is very geeky, but a lot of fun. Check that article out. Another one is vertical photovoltaics. Innovative setup generates more electricity. That's solar panels vertical instead of the traditional angled or flat, right? Mm-hmm. Check it out. And there's great research going on in Germany, by the way, for this whole area. So that's a good one. And then another one I liked is scientists create world's most water-resistant surface from the UK's The Guardian outlet for news. So that's a really cool one. It has a lot of profound potential real world applications. So those are our honorable mentions for this week.
Absolutely. And ladies and gentlemen, again, if you want to find out more, Ralph mentioned the tab there, and yep, right there at the top, it'll be Ralph Bond. And Ralph, I want to thank you again. I want to apologize again for what happened yesterday, but thank you for making time today. And it was a great show. And in the coming weeks, hopefully we have some things sorted out that everything should go as far as the average listener goes. You should not notice any kind of difference, just more Ralph at the usual time, and everything should go smoothly. With that being said, I hope that you have a great December. Everyone stay warm, stay happy, stay healthy, and we'll catch you here next time. Until then, have a great day. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.